morning and welcome to Rising. I'm Ameshia, filling in for Amber Duke. I'm joined at the desk remotely today by Jessica Burbank. Wonderful to be hosting with you today, Jess.
Yeah, it's good to be with you, Ameshia. We're going to try and not have too much fun with Amber out. We miss you, Amber. We'll hold it down.
Absolutely. Well, Jessica, you know there's been a lot of crazy news. Why don't you start us off today?
Well, Ameshia, President Biden is not happy with special counsel Robert Hur's characterization of him as a, quote, sympathetic, well-meaning, elderly man with a poor memory. In his investigation of Biden's handling of classified documents, Hur wrote, Mr. Biden's memory appeared to have significant limitations. Biden's recorded conversations are often painfully slow, with Mr. Biden struggling to remember events and straining at times to read and relay his own notebook entries. Biden apparently, quote, did not remember when he was vice president, forgetting on the first day of the interview when his term ended. He did not remember, even within several years, when his son Beau died. Now the president angrily hit out at Hur's retelling of events during a press conference yesterday. Let's watch that.
I know there's some attention paid to some language in the report about my recollection of events. There's even reference that I don't remember when my son died. How in the hell dare he raise that? Frankly, when I was asked the question, I thought to myself, wasn't any of their damn business.
President Biden, something the special counsel said in his report is that one of the reasons you were not charged is because, in his description, you are a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory.
I'm well-meaning, and I'm an elderly man, and I know what the hell I'm doing. I've been president. I put this country back on its feet. I don't need his recommendation. It's totally
How bad is your memory, and can you continue as president?
My memory is so bad, I let you speak.
In a statement, White House special counsel also discounted Hur's assessment, writing, quote, we do not believe that the report's treatment of President Biden's memory is accurate or appropriate. The report uses highly prejudicial language to describe a commonplace occurrence among witnesses, a lack of recall of years-old events. Now, as a reminder, Hur did not find Biden criminally liable for any alleged mishandling of classified documents. He, however, did find that Biden, quote, willfully retained and shared highly classified information while he was a private citizen.
Compared to a poll from back in 2020, voters have lost a significant amount of confidence in Biden's mental acuity. Voters who told NBC News they believe Biden to be competent and effective dropped from 47% of respondents in 2020 to 22% in 2024. Well, Jessica, again, lots to discuss here. The special counsel's report, the big gimme here was that there was no criminality found, quite frankly. But because of some of the comments that special counsel Hur made, now there is the news story that, Biden's not mentally fit. He's forgetting things. Quite frankly, as someone who lost a parent to cancer, I don't think there's any way in hell you forget the date or the time or the feelings of those events, no matter how old you are. I think that more than likely he was just frustrated at even being asked that question because of the level of ridiculousness that it is. But I do think that this election cycle, age is going to be a big question. It continues to be a big question, not only for President Biden, but also for Donald Trump, who most recently has confused Nikki Haley and Nancy Pelosi, has thought that he's running against former President Barack Obama, and has been making bomb sounds on the campaign trail.
Right, exactly. It's not just something that's unique to President Joe Biden, but I know people who have visited the White House and have raised their own concerns privately about the mental state of the president. I think it's telling that he wasn't able to recall things in his own notebook. These seem like significant events. I don't think the special counsel would raise these for no reason. But of course, we have seen Donald Trump do very similar things, getting very angry at Nancy Pelosi when asked about Nikki Haley. Yes, they're kind of, older women with brown hair, but beyond that don't have much in common, especially when you consider the political scene. So a bit shocking that the two candidates that are front running because there's the selection of the party in the case of Joe Biden, it seems that we're in a case where we have the old folks' home of Washington, the oldest Congress in history. These are the front runners for president. When we had people like Rubio leave politics, or rather Mitt Romney. Now I'm confusing two similarly looking politicians. But when Mitt Romney left and he said we need a new generation coming into Washington, I fully support that, but we also need a new generation that's going to bring new ideas, not more of the same hand-picked establishment candidates.
We also have policy to think about here. One of the things I think that the president came out forcefully last night and talked about was the policies, was that he got America back on track. We're looking at an economy that by all marks and standards is doing really well, even though that's been tough to message on the campaign trail, specifically coming out of the pandemic, a global pandemic that the world felt and that many economies across the globe are still really struggling from. I think that what we have here, again, are two senior candidates, it is what it is, who in Joe Biden's case is someone who is a sitting president. So when you have that, you also have the incumbency advantage. That is what it is. And in Donald Trump's case, he has blown all of his competition out of the water. It's not that he doesn't have competition. It's that within his party, he runs that party. And we're seeing time and again that happens to be the case, even though Nikki Haley is still in this race. I think that there is issue to be taken here with the fact that age considerably comes up, and I think in a much more perverse way as it relates to Joe Biden than it has with Donald Trump, particularly because that is a line of attack that we've seen time and time again. Unfortunately, neither candidate can do anything about their age. I would like to stay at 25 for the rest of my life. That's never going to happen. I'm sure Joe Biden, when asked questions in that probe about incidents that happened 40 plus years ago, hell, most of us can't remember something that happened a decade ago, 5 years ago. Those details get a little bit sketchy. That is not uncommon.
Yeah, I think the main concern here among young voters, I want to go to that poll where we saw it was an NBC poll, a double-digit 20-point difference between Trump and Biden, showing Trump winning with just a 3% reported margin of error. Now, we had a Quinnipiac poll during a similar time frame from about January 25th to the 30th, both national polls. But in the recent NBC poll, you can see if you scroll down and really read the crosstabs that they asked a few questions to get a sense of who the people they were talking to were, what the state of the country was. And while the ideological breakdown was pretty representative of other robust surveys on this, they asked whether or not they had used TikTok, the respondents. And 77% said no, which tells me that the respondents of this poll lean very old and that the youth vote wasn't represented. Now, we know younger voters lean towards Biden, and we also know there was a nationally representative Quinnipiac poll of registered voters as well that had a 6-point difference with Biden in the lead. And so I really think when we're looking at this polling, we're treating a sample as if it's random when really it's the result of who's on these lists of nationally, registered voters that have a cell phone available, which means they gave it to a political campaign at some point. They gave it so that they could take surveys before they entered it on an online platform. It just seems to me, and there's some data to back this, that that's overwhelmingly older people. So how representative the polls are of who shows up, I'm not sure. But we also know that Biden's not doing terribly well with younger voters, mostly on the issue of student loan debt and on the issue of his handling of the Middle East. But when we look at the economy, I think it's a mistake that a lot of conservatives have been making to say, oh, look at how bad the economy is under Biden. This is Bidenomics, the results of his policies. And I'm to the left of Biden, but I will say that the stimuluses that were passed under the Biden presidency absolutely saved us from a recession. We would be in a much worse place if it were not for the IRA and the spending around COVID stimulus. So that's one thing that Biden's been hit on a lot that I just don't think is merited.
And I agree with you there. I also think that national polls are problematic. We've seen that time and time again in multiple election cycles. State polls are a lot more effective when it comes to paying attention to what's actually happening on the ground and things that turn out in the elections themselves. The national polling has consistently been false and created false narratives as it relates to Joe Biden, no matter who they're polling. But on top of that, we know that polls don't vote, people do. And South Carolina showed tried and true black voters and younger voters. Those are the top bases for the Democratic Party, the top bases for Joe Biden. They will come out and vote for Joe Biden in November.
Right. Yeah. There's a base of sure voters that I think, don't get polled too frequently, consistently show up for Democrats. We also have this issue of, just general low voter turnout for presidential contests, having like 60% of the country not show up and cast a ballot has been a huge problem that really neither of the major two political parties are inspiring people to participate in presidential contests. Or sorry, 40% rather staying home. Highest it's been about 60% people casting a ballot in a presidential election. And so that's huge. And we now have a situation where there are some pretty viable third-party candidates. And when you introduce them into the polling, things get really interesting. And so I would like to see more 2024 polls with more independent candidates running. We have, RFK Jr. being considered frequently, and that has shown a lot of variance among the polling. Some polls show it's better for Trump. It gives him the leg up. Some show it's better for Biden. But I really think when we talk about third-party candidates and we talk about spoiler candidates, we can't really talk about it like that when we have 40% of the country not inspired to show up. Those are gettable voters. Of course, your regular voters could leave your party and vote for a third party candidate. But when we have so many people not inspired to even participate, I think you really can't make the excuse that another candidate is spoiling the electorate.
And we have more Rising coming up next.